Welcome to part 16 of this series, trying to locate the sons of Noah and where they really went to. Now in this video we're going to be looking at the Hittites and the Thracians. This is an image of a Hittite warrior, and you see these pointed up shoes. That's a feature of the Hittite culture. Now it's important that you watch episodes 11 and 15 before you watch this video, maybe also 10 as well, just to get a foundation for some of the things that we're going to speak of. Otherwise you won't really know what we've been discussing, because in the last video we were speaking about how the Persians, they wanted to create a satrapy in Thrace, and they were moving into the territory of the Thracians, and most of the Thracian tribes submitted, which we found a bit strange, because we're looking at the description of these Thracians as warlike and wild and savage. And why did they submit to the Persians without putting up a great fight? And we spoke about that in the last video. But remember how there was one tribe that wouldn't submit, that put up a fight? It was the Getae. Okay. Now this Getae is quite interesting because some scholars have linked them to the Hittites, and we can see that it says here that Getae is also connected to the Dacians. Some of the historians say that the Getae, that the Dacians are descendants of the Getae. Now this is interesting because if it's true that the Getae are connected to the Hittites, we've got potentially other avenues now to find more out about where these Hittites were and their influence on the ancient world. Because we've been talking about the different ways you can pronounce this word. We've been thinking about Heth, Hatti. Remember we spoke about Kitza or Keta with the Kitan, with the Katae region in the ancient kingdom of Katae near China, northern China. So that's why the scholars are linking this Katae to the Hittites. And it says this is the interesting part when we think about this, because Strabo, one of the first ancient sources to mention the Getaean Dacians, stated that the Dacians lived in the western parts of Dacia towards Germania and the sources of the Danube, and the Getae living in the eastern parts. So can you see how potentially different this is, might be different to what we've kind of been presented with? Because if the Dacians are connected to the Hittites, then we've got Hittite tribes living towards Germania. And if we think about what we've been presented with in let's say you wanted to learn about the Hittites and you watch a documentary, let's say more mainstream, following the consensus, and you watch the documentary about the Hittites in this region of Turkey, going into northern Syria, north of the modern state of Israel, you might come away thinking, okay, now I know about the Hittites, but do you have a really like a true picture, a fair picture of their influence in the ancient world? Because now we're seeing potentially that they could have been dwelling near Germania, towards Germania, okay, into Europe. So the picture's starting to change now. Now I want to do something a little bit different in this video from what we've done before. Thinking about this Getae and this word gets, and there's different ways of maybe saying this word, to try to see, can we find a people who are still living, who are connected to the Hittites, and try and think about DNA. So there are a people living in Siberia known as the Ket people, or the Keto. Now this is interesting because this word Ket seems to be an even closer derivation of the word Heth. Okay, so Heth or Hatti or Kati or the Ketan. Can you see that? It's very close. So potentially this could be a Hittite people. So we're just making this this link. So it's we're speculating, but if it's true that these Kets are connected to the Hittites, then we actually have we could see their Hittite DNA. Okay, it says here, now if you're new to haplogroups and this DNA, don't worry if maybe some of this goes over your head, because I'm also new to this haplogroups and the DNA as well, but it could be very useful to our study going forwards. but hopefully you just get the main idea from it, and we'll slowly try introduce these DNA and haplogroups to the videos. But it says here that these cats mostly belong to Y DNA haplogroup Q. But before we get into that, let's just go to see what these people look like and just get an idea of their culture a little bit, because I know these images are small, but you can kind of get an idea of the people and see it with these with the houses, with the style of the teepee, very similar to the Native American Indian culture. And if we look at the haplogroup Q, because this is what they say they're in. Now this is maternal DNA, so it's going from father to son, father to son. And this haplogroup Q, they call it a Native American Indian haplogroup, because Native American Indian tribes dominate this haplogroup. And we can see that the cats are at the top with 93%, okay, so the highest. And we can kind of see that it makes sense with the with the people, with their appearance and with their culture and their way of life. It does seem very you could describe this as like Native American Indian, but this is actually in Siberia, Russia. So, like I said, I'm also new to this DNA and its haplogroups. I've only just recently started looking at it. But let's just look to see what we're looking at here. So this is like a family, trying to imagine it's like a family tree of haplogroups. And we're looking at this haplogroup Q, okay? Now they're saying that this haplogroup Q, this family, is considered like a Native American Indian haplogroup, okay? Now if we look at this, and we think about, if we kind of try to tie it into the work that we've been doing and the things that we're looking at. Remember we spoke about this languages. This person was trying to create a Hittite language family, and you see that there, that Ketan, that Ket. Can you see the similarity between that and the Ket? Just to show you that in case maybe you haven't been watching the videos. That's what we're making that link. So this is Ketan, which is connected to the Hittites, and you can see that Ket. But this person, Professor John Campbell, is trying to create this this family of languages, and he includes Basque, which is northern Spain, Caucasian, Siberian dialects. You see that? So this is the connection. Is he's saying that there's Hittite influence in Siberia with his language, with his linguistics, and now we're seeing potentially that the DNA support that, because these people, these Ket people, they are in Siberia. See that? So this is where it gets fascinating, where the DNA starts to potentially match the linguistics. But you see how it also spreads, and then goes to Japan, but then it goes to the New World with Native American Indian tribes, Dakota, Iroquois, Choctaw, Muskoka, and then going even further south into South America to the Aztecs. So this is fascinating, because if we look at this haplogroup Q, now let me just try summarize, especially for those that aren't new to this, that are new to this kind of haplogroups. Haplogroup Q is considered like a Native American, okay? Let's try and see if I've got a better picture to show you. Okay, so this is haplogroup Q. Now it's showing, obviously the darker percentage is going to be the stronger, the higher amounts found, the higher frequencies of this haplogroup Q. But we can see here a higher percentage here in this region going in towards Siberia, into Russia. But you can kind of see this kind of might be tracking like a migration of people to kind of support this professor's work, that this family of languages has spread over a vast area, even going into the New World, going into the Aztec regions in South America. So this could be potentially Hittite migration, okay? Maybe one of the tribes of the Hittites. So it's very, very interesting that that we potentially now have the DNA to support this family of languages and this influence of this language is spreading. Now, the other thing that was interesting, just to kind of support to support this idea of this potentially being Hittite DNA, because it's obviously making this claim. I found this other article speaking about languages. I haven't fully studied it because it's actually lots of things in here are very, very interesting that connect the Hittite to Akkadian. But I just want to read you this part here. It says, "It appears to be now admitted that the Hittites were a Tartar people, and their language should therefore belong to the Turco-Tartar group." So this is interesting because now the Hittites have been connected to the Tartar people. Okay, so can we see the DNA to support this claim by looking at these haplogroup Q? Okay, because if the Hittites, if these Ket people are a Hittite people and they're carrying haplogroup Q predominantly, then that makes haplogroup Q potentially a Hittite, or the Hittites are connected to haplogroup Q. So let's have a look to see who else is connected to this haplogroup Q. Let's see what we can see here. You see it says here, look, Siberian Tartars. The Siberian Tartars also carry haplogroup Q, so they're related to these Kets. And then we also look here and we see the Turkmens. So we've got Siberian Tartars related to the Kets. We've also got Turkmens connected to the Kets. Also Altaians. Now don't worry if you don't know all these different names. We can look at them slowly as we go, but just to show you that connection, that this claim here in this article is actually supported by the DNA. See, let's read that again. It appears that the Hittites were a Tartar people, okay, belong to the Turco-Tartar group. So there's a connection between the Hittites and the Tartars and the Turks, and potentially we can actually see it in the DNA. Because if we can make this claim that the Kets are connected to the Hittites, that would make the Hittites connected to the Tartars, and it also makes them connected to the Turkmens. So that's fascinating, that we can get the DNA matching the linguistics. But what we need is the historical record. Can we find the historical record, like, which empires, which kingdoms, which battles, can kind of tie it all together. But now it gets really, really, really interesting, because if we look at these haplogroups, and what we're trying to think about also in this video is, also we're going to speak a bit about the Indo-European languages. What connects English to Sanskrit, and what connects Sanskrit to Lithuanian? How are these languages connected? How are these regions connected? And we're going to be looking at that, because if we think about these haplogroups, let me show you that image again. Where's my picture? This family, kind of thinking of it like a family tree. Okay. Now remember, haplogroup Q is considered to be a Native American haplogroup. Okay, and it's got two branches. But can you see R is related to Q? Okay, see that? And then R goes and branches off as well. But this haplogroup R is considered Indo-European, like an Indo-European haplogroup. So how are the Indo-Europeans related to the Native American Indians? And how do we make sense of that? But to me it seems like it could be answered with these Hittites. Okay, because just to recap, if the Ket people are a Hittite people, and the Kets carry predominantly haplogroup Q, Q is related to R. So that means the Hittites would also be connected to R, and R is Indo-European. So yeah, it kind of gets very interesting, because haplogroup R is fascinating, and that could actually explain some of the story of why English, Germanic languages like English, is connected to Sanskrit, and why Sanskrit is connected to Lithuanian. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at haplogroup R and see what we can find. That's this one. Let's actually first go maybe to the overall picture. Okay, so this is haplogroup R. Now there's two branches. Let me just show you that in case you're new to these haplogroups like I am. R breaks off into R1A and R1B. So there's two main branches of R. And if you can't see, if it's a bit small, this is the R1A, branch, and on the west of Europe it's R1b, but you also have R1a branch here, you know, let's say towards Russia region, Lithuania, Russia. Okay, but can you see how this kind of might explain this Indo-European? This could be the DNA to support the linguistics, because you've got R1a in India, in Iran, Afghanistan, going further north, okay, but R1a is obviously related to R1b, and you've got R1b in Western Europe, okay, so the DNA in Western Europe is connected to the DNA in this region. And the linguistics is saying that there's this very huge family of Indo-European languages. So you can see how the DNA is supporting the linguistics. So how do we make sense of this? If we think about, let's think about that language, what the Professor John Campbell was saying, okay? Now we're thinking maybe the Hittites could be partly behind this and to explain this. You see how he's got here that the Hittites, this Hittite family includes Basque, okay, so that's northern Spain. So we should be looking for some DNA evidence to support this, and also Caucasian. But you see, it also says here northern India. See that? So this Ketan family has influenced northern India. Now remember, we're thinking about that, what I said about English being connected to Sanskrit. But you've also got this connection to the Basque region of northern Spain. So let's have a look to see what we can find out about that. Does the DNA support that? Now if you look here, this is now R1b, okay? So we're looking at, this branch is R1a, this one is R1b, but remember that we're still, I don't want you to forget what we're speaking about. If haplogroup Q is potentially Hittite, then so is haplogroup R connected to the Hittites, okay? Just to make sure you know what we're saying. If you look here, see this dark area in northern Spain? You know, this is kind of the area of the Basque community, okay? It's like a region of the Basque of northern Spain. You can see how it's predominantly darker there. So that's quite interesting, because that kind of supports the linguistics, because he's saying that the Hittites influenced this region of Basque, and the DNA is saying there is a very strong high percentage in this region here. And the interesting thing is that there's been connections with the Basque community to the Native American Indian language. So how are these people here connected to the Native American Indians in terms of DNA and in terms of language? How do we explain that? But we do see that there's possibility with the Hittites and these Hittite empires, Hittite migration. Notice it's also quite strong here in this western France. And remember, we spoke about that region known as Amorica and the Veneti, remember? And we were wondering about the Amorites and the Phoenicians. So the Phoenicians could also be part of this Indo-European element. And we see in Ireland and Western England, Wales, it's quite strong. So can you see that it could be the Phoenicians that could be obviously connected, and also the Hittites. I want to show you the other branch, just to show you. Can you see this is the other branch, R1a, that we saw here, and you can see it's quite strong in Afghanistan, going further north, and also in it's also present in Pakistan and northern India. So we're kind of speaking about the Indo-Aryans, and this we'll have to do more research to go look into the historical record to see, can we find the history to support all this? You know, who were the empires, who were the kingdoms, and where were the battles? But we can see that the DNA is could be proved quite crucial to this. Now I just want to also tie it back into what we were speaking about with Tyrus. If we kind of recap about Tyrus, because remember we said in Jubilees that it said that Tyrus inhabited 4 great islands in the midst of the sea approaching the portion of Ham, and we wondered about Cyprus and Crete, Sicily and Sardinia, remember? And then that person was trying to connect in that article the Thracians with the Minoans, that ancient civilization of Crete with the Minoans. And where did the Minoans go to? And then there was that theory about maybe the Tyrus um, spread around, and is connected to the Native American Indian cultures in North America, South America. Now, what's interesting here is this Q, which is Native American Indian. We can see it present in Europe. It's present quite a lot here in Scandinavia, but it's also here in Sicily, quite strong percentages there, and also in Crete, and a little bit on Sardinia. Okay. So I'm wondering about this Tyrus connection to the New World. If we think about that legend by the Persian historian that Tyrus combined with Canaan. So maybe it's this combination of Tyrus and the Hittites or the Phoenicians, but let's say Tyrus and the Hittites could be showing that connection with Tyrus to the Native American Indians, because if his descendants combined with sons of Heth, and we've already seen this potential for haplogroup Q being connected to the Hittites, we can kind of make sense maybe of why we're seeing this Native American Indian DNA in Europe, even on these islands. It could be a connection between Tyrus and the Hittites. Another interesting thing, if you're good with your history, you'll know about the empire of the Huns. So they're saying that the Huns could carry this haplogroup Q, this Native American Indian haplogroup. So that would make the Huns also connected to the Native American Indians. And they say that might explain some of this DNA in Europe coming from that invasion of the Huns. So lots of interesting things to think about, and I just want to speak a little bit about the Indo-European languages before we finish, because we've got this very wide range of languages. It's going to be a huge population of people spread over a vast area of the world, and we're like wondering, how can Indic be connected to the Baltic, and how is Indic connected to the Germanic, and why are the Hittites seem so important in all this? And if we look at now, I'm also not a linguistic expert, just a layman, so don't worry if you also this is new to you, and we're not going to go crazy in detail, but just try and get a little idea about these Indo-European languages. I want to show you this kind of also another family tree. This is the Indo-European languages. Can you see how they're branching backwards? And this older branch is Anatolian. Okay, so just want to show you what's in that. Okay, see, look, the Hittite is considered Anatolian. Okay, so Hittite's considered Indo-European. But remember, just to kind of think about that, Heth, son of Canaan, son of Ham. Okay, so Heth is a Hamite in a way. Okay, so why is he connected to the Indo-Europeans, and why does he have an Indo-European language? Okay, so we're kind of seeing that. To me, it seems to make sense, this connection with Tyrus and the Hittites, and that connection bringing Hittite into the European world and connecting the Hittites into Indo-European. That seems to be making sense to me. But if we look at these branches, it's bigger here. Just remember, Hittite is Anatolian, and that's the older branch. Remember, I think this picture is better here. You see, Anatolian is the older branch of this family tree of languages, and Hittite is in this branch. So it's saying that the Hittite is actually, the earlier branch influencing these other languages. So can you see, it's actually very important for us to study the Hittites, because they have a massive impact on the linguistics, and potentially also going to have an impact on the DNA and the civilization for the Western world. So we need to look to see what is the history of connecting the Hittites to the Indo-Aryans and India, and we also need to look at what is the history to connect the Hittites to the Balto-Slavic or the Lithuanian. Remember, we spoke about, I think it shows it nicely here. They've got other images. Let's see other images. Can you see how this R1A is very strong in the region of the Baltic? Okay, we think about the region like Lithuania and Poland. Because we spoke about Lithuania, what connects Sanskrit to Lithuania region. Can we see how this DNA is very strong towards the Baltic, and it's related to R1B. I think I'll show it on this one. Okay, towards India and Afghanistan. So we can see that the DNA supports the idea for this linguistic connection between Sanskrit and Lithuania. But what is the history behind it? That's what we have to cover. And also, if we look at this, I'll give you an idea of what, if you want to do research on your own. If we look at this family tree again, you see that it's got this italic. So what connects the Hittites to italic? Now that could be the Etruscans, because the Etruscans are connected to the Hittites. So that's a potential avenue there if you want to research on your own to understand how the Hittites have influenced the italic. That would be, I would say, just going that way. And then if we think about the Baltic, what connects the Hittite to the Baltic? No, that could be the Trojans. We've kind of spoken about the Trojans. It might be researching the Trojans could answer this, and also thinking about the Phoenicians. You know, how the Phoenicians were with that. Remember we spoke about the tin mining operation, how they were in France, Spain, Britain, going into Scandinavia. Those are some avenues to try and maybe explain some of these things we've been speaking about, trying to find the history behind it. But there's one last thing for this video. I know we've covered quite a lot, but I couldn't help but notice, looking at this this R haplogroup. Look at this percentage here in Africa. You've got this very strong percentage here in this region of, say, Nigeria, Chad. This is fascinating because I want to kind of tie it into the picture that we're building and all the work that we've been covering. Can we see how this is potentially very important? That we've got this Indo-European haplogroup, what's considered Indo-European in this region here. And we've been speaking about potentially how important this region could have been in the ancient world. Okay, now if you haven't watched the videos, you need to watch some of the video to know what we're talking about. But we've been speaking about the Amorites being potentially in this region, and the Hittites being in this region. Okay, and now we might actually have the DNA to support that. Just like a final recap, we're looking at the Ket people and noticing this word Ket being very similar to what scholars have been looking at with the Hittites, because they call it a Ketan family tree. This is Professor John Campbell. He's Ketan family tree, the Keti, and then we can see that with the Ket. And then we thought, let's look to see their DNA, and they carry haplogroup Q, what's known as haplogroup Q. Okay, and then when we look at the family tree of haplogroups, where's the haplogroups? I think it was here. Nope. This one. We can see if we can connect the Hittites to Q, that means R is also connected to Q, or to the Hittites. And that really gets fascinating with these branches of R1B and R1A. But can you see that if the Hittites are connected to R, and we look at this picture again, can you see that DNA in this region? This could be Hittites in this region supporting the work that we're doing. And can you see how it branches out here this way towards the Nile River, and towards that region that we spoke about maybe being the land of Shinar. So it's very interesting the way this moves like this in this region. And then we're going to speak more about this in the coming videos, because now we potentially have DNA to support the work that we're doing. That's why I kind of brought it up as something quite interesting. Like maybe we can say like another tool. So we can look at the history, the historical record, but can we find the DNA? And we should find the DNA. because if what we're speaking about is true, and the picture that we're building is getting stronger, but if it's true, everything must hold up. So there should be linguistic evidence, but there also has to be DNA evidence. And here we see potentially this could be the DNA evidence to support. So I hope you enjoyed this on the this video on the Hittites, also combining with the Thracians. And in the next video we're going to look at Madai, son of Japheth. And Madai might also help us with this puzzle of these languages, because we see you've also got this Indo-Iranian group. You see this Iranic, Indo-Iranic. It's also connected. So maybe Madai might help us with this. But until that video, I'll see you in the next one.